Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Kim Brown with the Rural Institute for Inclusive Communities, Transition and Employment Projects, and the Montana Deafblind Project. And Teresa Baldry and I will be your moderators for today. We do have live captioning available for today's session. To access the captions, open the captioning link that I've posted in our chat box in a new browser window, and then you can adjust the size of that browser window so that you will see your captions scroll up from the bottom. We also have American Sign Language interpretation available. You should see the interpreter in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and you can either expand or hide that webcam image. Today's webinar is sponsored by the Montana Deafblind Project, which is funded in whole or in part by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs, and through a contract with Children's Special Health Services at the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services. I'm going to stop for just a minute and bring up a slide for you there. Please know that the statements shared in the presentation today do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the sponsoring departments. All attendees are currently muted. If you want to ask the presenter a question or make a comment, please type your question or comment into the chat or question box. And please note that only you, the moderators, and the presenter will be able to see what you've typed into the chat box. For those of you who requested Montana Office of Public Instruction Renewal Unit credit when you registered, those will be emailed to you after the webinar. It can take up to a couple of weeks to get those sent to you. And please note that you must have pre-registered and requested those in order to receive the OPI credit. GoToWebinar does provide a certificate of attendance, and that link will be sent to you in a follow-up email that you will receive tomorrow. Sorry, I just had a bit of background noise there that I'm going to cut off the microphones for. I apologize for that. Today's session is being recorded for the Montana Deafblind Project and Transition and Employment Projects resource libraries. And by participating in the webinar, you grant permission for any chats and/or questions that you submit to the webinar platform to be recorded. The video for today's webinar will be posted to our training archives pages, and I will put the links for those training archives pages in the chat box a little bit later during the webinar. Our presenter today did make the slides available as a handout. Those slides are posted on our website, or they are available for download in the handouts section of your GoToWebinar dashboard. If you can't find that dashboard, look to the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and there should be an orange box with a white arrow in it. If you click on that, it will open your dashboard, and one of the links on your dashboard, or one of the boxes, is called Handouts. If you click on that, you will see the slideshow presentation for today, and you can download that. We will have an evaluation after today's session, and I will put the link to that evaluation in the chat box later on during the webinar. The link will also be in the follow-up email that you receive from GoToWebinar tomorrow. We really ask that you take the time to fill out that evaluation. We value your feedback, and we use what you tell us in order to continue to improve our webinars and also to decide on what topics we should have for future sessions and what presenters we might like to invite. So please do take the time to fill that out. And now I would like to turn things over to Ellen Condon for a few words about the Montana Deafblind Project, and then to Teresa Baldry for how and whom to refer to the project. Ellen?
Thank you, Kim. Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us. My name is Ellen Condon, and Kim and I are the co-directors of the Montana Deafblind Project, We are housed at the University of Montana's Rural Institute on Disabilities, and we are federally funded to identify and provide resources and information and support students, families, and people who work with kids with a dual sensory loss, so a combination of hearing and vision loss. This year, we are focusing heavily on early identification and intervention. And so Tanny has been invited to present on PlayBased Assessment as another strategy of working with a young child with a dual sensory loss. And I'm going to turn this over to Teresa Baldry. So thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thanks, Ellen. And as everyone else has said, welcome and thanks for being a part of today. I'm going to tackle first the how. So to assist with connecting and referring individuals, their families, and other supporting persons with that dual sensory loss to the Montana Deafblind Project, we've developed a couple resources that are posted on our homepage. The small image in the upper left is of our homepage. And from there is a video of the Rural Institute, and right underneath that is an FAQ, a frequently asked questions document, as well as a Montana Deafblind Project referral checklist. Both of those are for you to use and share in helping understand who and how to connect to the project. Back to the how, at the bottom of every one of our web pages is a blue banded area. Within that, we have multiple ways where you can connect with us. There are phone numbers where messages can be left. We have a fax number, an email specific to the project, and all of that information will make its way to me. So I look forward to hearing from you. We also have a contact form link where anything can be typed in and then sent on. Please do include if you would like us to reach back out directly to you and that preferred method in doing so. So we look forward to hearing from you, and please look forward to today's information. I'll pass it back to Kim Brown.
Thank you very much, Teresa and Ellen. And with that, I am delighted to introduce and thank today's speaker. Today we have with us Dr. Tanny Anthony, who is the director of the Access, Learning, and Literacy, or ALL team, with the Exceptional Student Services Unit within the Colorado Department of Education. Tanny serves as the state consultant on blindness, low vision, and the project co-director of the Colorado Services for Children and Youth with Combined Vision and Hearing Loss project. Dr. Anthony received her PhD from the University of Denver in the area of child and family studies. She is a teacher of students with visual impairments and an orientation and mobility specialist. Tanny presents frequently on the topics of sensory disabilities in the early years and working with children and youth with sensory and additional disabilities. She has authored over 20 book chapters and has contributed to peer-reviewed journals. She is currently an adjunct instructor with East Carolina University, the University of Denver, and the University of Northern Colorado. And with that, I'm delighted to turn it over to Dr. Anthony, and we will just take a minute to switch our screen over to her.
Okay, so I'm hoping you all can see my screen. Yes, somebody please?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hey, everybody. If you can, Teresa's going to be so kind to monitor the chat. If you would just put in where you're from, I would love to know just where people are sitting at this very moment. I'm in my husband's office in Genesee, Colorado, just a little bit west of Denver. So I'd love just to hear where people are from, if you would indulge me.
And Tanny, this is Kim. Just really quickly, I am seeing your webcam, but not your slides. So do you want to try sharing them again? I apologize.
Yep. So what should I do?
Let's make sure that we have you as the presenter.
Okay, so last time I had something that I hit
Okay.
to get the slides on the screen. So I'm going to hit show my screen again.
There.
And then, did that work?
That did. And then you can just go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to go into slide mode. So when I do that, will you tell me if, so does that help or hurt?
That works perfectly. Thank you. And I apologize.
Okay, nope, that's good. I want to make sure. So Teresa, can you let me know where people are from?
Absolutely. So I've got Dayton, Ohio, San Francisco Bay Area. Hi, Tanny. Nancy Hatfield from Washington State here. Riverton, Riverton, Wyoming. Julie let us know that she can see the slides in that San Francisco Bay Area. Glasgow, Montana, which is in the northeastern part of our state. I'm glad you were able to connect. North Carolina, the United Kingdom.
Whoa.
Yes. Twin Cities, Minnesota. Lafayette, Louisiana. Another Louisiana, Covington. Warner, South Dakota. Someone else is joining me here in Miles City, Montana. I'm very excited about that. And then Virginia.
Okay.
New Orleans. And Emily LaSalle from the Montana School for the Deaf and the Blind is in Helena, Montana, joining from the living room of her house with a roaring fire.
Wow, there you go. Okay, I know there may be others, but hey, thank you. That just gives me some perspective, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So I do want to talk a little bit about the title, Play as an Assessment and Programmatic Vehicle in the Early Years. This is actually a presentation that I was asked to do by Texas Focus a couple months ago, and Teresa was one of my participants, and she asked if I would replicate it. So I will tell you, play is really a big topic. Assessment is really a big topic. So when I did the Texas Focus training, the focus was really on what happens after the assessment. How do you use some of the information that you've collected as a programmatic vehicle? So that's really where I'm going. I will be talking about play assessment, but I'm hoping you'll join me with what do you do when you gather some good information about kids. So the description, I think, has been sent out. So I will just quickly confirm that we're going to just look about how you can gain information about a child's sensory and developmental status, really from watching and observing and interacting a child within a play routine. I'll talk more about that. But once you have that information, how do you take what you know, where the child is, to go to your next step to say, how do we promote further development with the child? And we're going to talk about just continuing to use play routines, and I'll explain that more as we go along. So I'm just going to keep going. So if you would indulge me, and Teresa, how about we take like the first 5 or 6? When you heard the word play, what do you think about? Why do you think it's important? And do you know how to play with kids? So you can pick any one of those questions. But when you hear play, and I think it's really important that you kind of have a verbal response to this, and mostly because sometimes people think play is frivolous. And you may have an administrator that says, really, you want to play? You want to buy toys? You want to do something kind of play-based assessment? Is that really important to little kids? So what do you think when you hear the word play? Why do you think it's important? And it may seem silly. Do you know how to play? We kind of need to know that, because if you're going to do play-based assessment or next step play and routines, it's a good idea to kind of know more about play. So Teresa, anything in the chat that you think might be good for all of us to hear?
It got really quiet. Okay, thank you. I've got a stages of play.
Ooh. Yep, there truly are stages of play, and play can be social, it can be around objects, it can be many things, but we are going to talk about stages. So anybody talk?
Play is communication in our kiddos. Play would seem to be the opposite of work, but is it? Interaction.
Good, good.
Engagement and fun. I think they've covered a lot.
I thank you. So thank you so much. So what comes to mind? So when I think about play, and I've been thinking about it for a really long time, when I was a younger practitioner in Alaska, Dr. Tony Linder came to the state and introduced play-based assessment at that time. And what I realized is that probably I was already doing some good work on play, but I just had a little more opportunity to think about it. So on this slide, I have some names. Some of you may recognize the names. If you don't recognize all of them, it's okay. But when I think about good play strategies, what we realize is they're very, very aligned with what we know about early intervention with children who are blind, visually impaired, certainly kids who are deaf, hard of hearing, and absolutely kids with deaf blindness. So it starts with Annie Sullivan, and I'm going to share a quote from Annie that when I read it, I thought, wow, she really got it long time ago. So many of you know that Annie Sullivan was Helen Keller's teacher. But Piaget and T. Barry Brazelton, who was a pediatrician, and Erickson, who was a developmental theorist, they didn't necessarily study kids with sensory challenges. But the truth is, if you read their work, you'll nod your head, because what you realize is that they do support play as a model of understanding children's development. Fred Rogers, who we all love, Bruce Perry, who is a terrific advocate of working with children and really dissecting the impact of neglect. When he just recently talked and really went through some neurodevelopment, I'm like, you are a play-based guy. Tony Linder will talk about. But honestly, as you go through the list, these are just people that I resonate to in my field. I am a teacher of students with visual impairment, so I come to the land of deaf blindness through that lens. But absolutely, people start saying the same things, and I'm going to share some of those theories and objectives with you. So I'm hoping this works. This is a little video that I'm hoping you will enjoy. I'm going to try to cue it up. Yep. But it is a beautiful sentiment to the power of play. So I will do a little audio description. You may have seen this before, but we have a little guy who is toddling along a rural road. It's a dirt road. He is pulling a big yellow dog, and he finds a puddle. So first effort, he goes through, and the dog is on the other side and looks like he's ready to go forward. Little boy puts the leash down, makes sure that dog stays in place, goes back in. He's in the puddle, runs through it, comes back, run through again, turns around, does a repeat. We got to do it one more time, runs through it, studies it a little bit. Now he's a little gingerly getting into the puddle, a new kind of stop, and now he's a little farther back from the puddle. He kind of raced past it, doing another assessment on that puddle, speeds in one more time. That's enough sated on that activity, grabs the dog leash, and off they go. So I want to make sure I hit the right. Okay, so I love that video because really when you look at it, and I'm hoping I narrated it properly, what you see are a couple of things that are really important. First was that was a total self-discovery. The puddle just happened to be there, and it absolutely was more interesting than continuing the walk. So the dog got parked, and the kid had an opportunity to explore that puddle. And the person who was obviously taking the video of the kid just let it happen. And it didn't happen once, it didn't happen twice, it happened repetitively, where this kid was just exploring that puddle. Things that changed were how fast he ran through it, how long he stayed in the puddle. There was a little bit of stomping. And when he was done with the puddle, life went on. And that's really just a great example of play, that if we just stood back and observed, we could learn a lot about what the kid was doing, maybe what the kid was thinking, what he was experiencing. If I was a physical therapist, I'd probably be looking at gait, speed, balance, what he was doing. If I was a early childhood educator, I may be looking at it from a different lens. And that's really what play-based assessment is. So here's that quote from Annie Sullivan that when I read it, I loved it. Let the child go and come freely. Let him touch real things and combine. Hang on, I got something in my way. Whoops, sorry. combine his impressions for himself instead of sitting indoors at the little round table while a sweet voiced teacher suggests that he build a stone wall with his wooden blocks, or make a rainbow out of strips of colored paper, or plant straw trees in a bead flower pots. Such teaching fills the minds with artificial associations that must be got rid of before the child can develop independent ideas of actual experience. Now, I will say to you, the truth is we do direct kids as they come into preschool. We do crazy art projects, etc. But what this is really talking about is from a concept development perspective of young kids. When we know children really are grounded in their learning experience, it's when they are having real life discoveries with real life objects and real life routines. So the idea is that when you are moving kids forward in concept developments, play sort of is a great way to do that, because the child is learning at his or her own pace with materials that hopefully are relevant to what's happening in daily routines. So here's Fred Rogers. Play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning, but for children, play is serious learning. Play is really the work of childhood, and I think somebody mentioned that in the chat. So further testimony, play is often overlooked as the keys that help unlock the doors to learning. Very fundamental. So way back in '74, people certainly are validating. It is a biological, psychological, and social necessity. It's about joy. So when we remember that little boy who was tackling that puddle, I think we all had the sense that this is a kid who was pretty happy. He was interested in what was happening before him, and it was something that brought him pleasure and discovery. When we have an open platform based on our own interest, our own motivations for discoveries, our own pacing for something, trying to learn something new. So play has been long validated in the research. If you go to this website, NAYC, you will see that there's great further testimony of play. And here's just 5 tenets that are sort of good for us to remember, because sometimes we can be a little scripted. Kids are making their own decisions. And that's like a decision like, do I run through that puddle one more time? Do I speed it up? Do I slow it down? The kids are intrinsically motivated. It's something that gives them pleasure. We may not see the pleasure in it, but we're going to look to see, does that kid really have pleasure? They're immersed in the moment, just like that little person. What was beautiful is whoever was doing that video wasn't interrupting. It was just standing back and watching that the child was in the moment. It's spontaneous. Puddles happen, not scripted. Play is enjoyable, and there's fun. It's very compatible with John Van Dyke's child-guided assessment for those of you in deafblindness who know his good work. Now, I will tell you, number 4, it's not scripted. Sometimes, and this is what we'll be learning today, when we join Kids Play, we're going to do a little bit of scripting for purposes of seeing what else does the child know, what else can the child do, and where are we going. So play works both ways. The child learns about the world, and when we're observing the child, we learn about the child. So sitting back, and this is a big part of play-based assessment, is really taking time to observe what is the child doing, what is the child interested in. And when we join the child, that's where we can figure out even more about what the child's learning. So from a sensory perspective, we can get a lot of information about what does the child see, what does the child hear, is there a proprioceptive preference? Does the child prefer firm pressure? Is this a child who wakes up a little bit when there's something vestibular and the child is more interested in rocking or bouncing? So we start to get a story about the child, and that's really important. And especially in the early years, we want to be good storytellers on behalf of the child. And then we can use that information for interventions or next steps. It's both an assessment and an intervention philosophy and a methodology. So what you see here with growth, and this is what Texas Focus really asked me to do, is how do we take something we've learned and we advance it? So you see growth, and then you see an arrow going upwards. And we're going to talk today about 2 particular concepts about moving forward. One is called horizontal and one is called vertical. And the idea is that horizontally planting seeds with kids is very important. One of the things that we know about young children with disabilities, and very specifically to kids with deafblindness, is oftentimes, if you look at a checklist, there's one opportunity to say, yep, the kid does it. There's one way to show the child may understand the concepts of in and out. But in truth, we want to pack that horizontally, because what that means is that the child is generalizing. They're generalizing that in and out concept across different materials, across different settings, across different scenarios. And that's really important. So it's not just one and done, move on. It's really, have we planted those seeds of that particular concept to make sure that the child understands it? Then we have the sense of vertical scaffolding. What this means is that, yep, you've got going in, what can I do to scaffold it a little higher? So there's maybe a little more problem solving, for example, for the child. So both are very important, and both should be used when you are taking what you understand that the child knows and moving it into some next steps. Are we planting seeds so it's more of a universal cross-pollination concept? Or are we gently moving it up so it's a higher level thinking skill? So this is one model of play. I think somebody mentioned that in the chat, and thank you for that. The play that I'm talking about here is probably more what we would consider object or interaction play, not so much social play. So it's not like parallel play, cooperative play, etc. So this is just one model. This is a model that I learned several years ago. And what you see with those 7 particular areas is that they have a particular sequence, but they can overlap. A child can be engaging in interpersonal play with a person, and you can start to see the beginnings of exploratory or sensory motor or object use. So I've highlighted 3 in red. In the interest of time, we will see how far we go, but I'm going to show you some examples of either exploratory, sensory motor, or object use, and then how it can move into more functional, relational, or more construction play. So for purposes of vertical play, if a child, for example, is at an exploratory level, I may introduce something that starts to take them in a functional level. And that may feel like a lot of words, like what does that mean? But that's what we're going to try to unpack today. So the good news with play-based assessment is every single developmental domain can be observed and probed. So the idea with a classic play-based assessment with a young child is we might do an arena-style assessment where the child in a play-based facility are in the middle of a room, and other people are kind of on the other side. They're just sitting around, but they don't have an active role with the child in the play-based scenario. They may make suggestions. So I could be an occupational therapist and I think, you know, I really want to see more hand skills. Can you find something where we're doing more of a pincer graph? So I can whisper or pass a note to the play-based facilitator to get more of what I need to fill my protocol. So I don't know if you can see me because at this point I can just see my screen, but I'm holding up the Transdisciplinary Play-Based Assessment book by Tony Linder. So this is one of the books or one of the methodologies that many people use for play-based assessment. It's actually being updated. I think it's going to be an online type of assessment. But here's what I want you to hear today. If you don't know about Dr. Linder's assessment, that's okay. Basically, you can take about any developmental protocol and you can complete it based on play-based observation and interactions. So get ready for some play. Here's what I tell people, and you should have this list in your handout, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it in the interest of time. But when you're doing a play-based assessment, you know, we are really looking at how do children interact with people and how do they really interact with objects. So I've just put some things that I would say bring with you, have handy so that you can do an assessment of where the child's at. So I'm hoping they all make sense, but you might have some shakers, some banders, some pounders, some turners, some toys that you might need 2 steps to make something happen. What I will tell you is that it is really a good idea that you have duplicate objects. So this isn't always possible, but let's just say you have a slinky and this kid absolutely adores the slinky and you want to kind of entice the child to do something else with the slinky. We don't take the slinky away from a kid who's engaged, but if we're bright and we thought about duplicate objects, then we have that backup slinky. So now I can introduce a second slinky and I can model that very thing that I'm hoping that I can entice the child to show if they understand or how how do I entice them so they can learn a new skill. Backdrops for contrast and complexity. If you know going in you have a child who has visual impairment, have a dark cloth, have a light cloth, have something that you can do some draping so that you can control the contrast of the object in the background, as well as reduce the complexity of all the things that the child has to look at. So you're going to pull some things together before. If you're making a home visit, you may just work with the family to pull out some things in the home environment. If it's a preschool setting, again, you can just design how you're going to set up those observations. So this section is called no item construct. So let's just say we each have a protocol, whether I'm the OT, the PT, the special education teacher, the early childhood special educator, the TVI, etc. One of the things that's really important is that sometimes when you look at assessment protocols, you will see the construct, and some assessment protocols give you more insight than others. But the idea is when you look at that tool, it's going to tell you what is being measured. And some tools don't really give you the full story. And that's why it's really important to say, what does it mean? So we're going to practice in a second so I can make this hopefully make sense to you. So let me just move on to that. So what's the construct? So again, I'm going to ask if you'll join me in the chat, but if you looked at a protocol and it said simple actions on objects, what do you think is being measured? What is the test company hoping that you will do to understand whether or not a child has simple actions on objects? So Teresa, I'm hoping people have given us a little bit of insight. What does it mean? And if people say different things, that's okay. What would it mean to see simple actions on objects in a test protocol?
I've got pat, bang on the table, rub.
Okay, that's good. We'll take them. I won't go for, I'm looking at my time and it's evaporating already, so I won't do explores objects. So here's, for example, what one tool company has said. Simple actions on objects acts with one basic strategy, not tied to the conventional use of the object, might not be true object exploration. So for example, everything gets mouthed, everything gets banged. So if I have those objects and I'm watching a child interact, I may see everything comes to the mouth, or everything gets kind of banged, or everything gets shook. And sometimes this is tied to what's the physical ability of the child. Can I shake? Can I bang? Can I pound? What can I do? But now you'll see in this particular tool, it's called hands-on learning, and I'll just put it up here. It's just a tool from Design to Learn that I used for this presentation. You start to see the distinction from simple actions to objects to explorers. All of a sudden, kids are really starting to do something that's different than just my typical strategy. I'm starting to do a little more exploration for the interest. What I'm kind of finding out is, what is this thing and what do I need to know about it? So you start to see different hand options. You may see that mouthing takes on more of an exploration. It's just not in my mouth sucking, but I'm actually using my tongue. I'm finding other parts of the object. From a play-based perspective, hopefully somebody's observing this saying, wow, you're getting a lot more information. Functional use, now we may see a child really definitely has an assigned use for an object, and it's usually the intended use. So if I have tools that I've brought and I'm observing the child and the child puts a hand on a cup, maybe brings it to the mouth with the idea not just for mouthing it, but actually I'm going to see if it has some liquid in it so I can take a drink. And then we have simple combinations. So now you start to see that kids may take two objects and figure out how to bring them together. So this has classic representation, like you bang on a bowl with a spoon or use a drumstick on a drum, but it doesn't have to be a spoon with the bowl. It could be that the child takes the toothbrush and hits it with the bowl. The idea is that kids are starting to bring things together. So I have some pictures. This would be like simple actions, exploration actions. So here you see kids who are just exploring. And what's nice about this is that if we were in a room and we were just taking time to observe, we see a little guy who's on his back. He's got a blue bucket on his tummy and his trunk, and his little legs and arms are coming up. He's learning probably a ton about the spatial dimensions of that particular object. So if you're a motor therapist or an O&M, you're starting to get a sense of some body image in space, but we're just looking to say what's happening with that object. But then get ready, because if I'm going to facilitate play, I may say, this is what you know what you're doing. What else can we do with that bucket because you're interested in it? That gives me a little more information. The other picture is that we just have a pegboard that has some tactile items that are of interest to the child. And this is a really important point, because when kids play, we've talked about mouth and hands, but we also may see feet and bodies involved. There are kids who are more interested or more responsive with their feet than they are with their hands. So in here, with this little guy with the foot experience, I'm just paying attention. Does it always seem to be on the left side? Is it both feet? How high up do you go? That little roller, what do you do with it? So the idea is we're just not giving things to kids and going, hey, have a good time, but we're really paying attention, because the next step is we got to do something with this information. This isn't like babysitting with the toy saying, hey, have a good time, I'll get back to you, and I'm happy you're busy. It's really, what are you doing that I can learn about what you know and learn? So now we have pictures of a little person doing some great water play splashing. I'm going to get a ton of information. A child who's got a bucket of, it looks like some rice. A kid having a great time with paper. How many kids absolutely love paper, whether it's Mylar, crepe paper, etc. But I'm going to start to pay attention, because I'm going to start to know what is happening with those objects from a play perspective, and what do I do with that information. So functional use of objects, we've talked about. We have a little person who's holding a brush. We'll get involved. We have a little boy leaning forward to turn on a sink. This is great. A kid with a book. So we're starting to see at this level, kids are really moving toward, what do I do with this particular object that's kind of in a conventional context. Here's some simple combinations, pots and pans, which we adore. So one things that we hope for with play is that you're looking at things like resonance. Like, think about what better sounds does a pot and a metal spoon make together, as opposed to two things that might be plastic. So what can I do? He's interested in it. What else can I do? Now we got a little guy with a drum, and one of the things I love about this is that drum is attached to him. So he's got this opportunity for practice and repetition because it's right there. And then we have a child who is doing some baking with a rolling pin, real life object with combinations. So again, when we start to look at our protocol, I focused on objects. It doesn't mean that these are the things that you're going to do necessarily with play-based assessment. My goal today is to give you examples so that you can look at your protocols and you can start to say, okay, if the child's at this level, how do we deepen it? What I do like about this hands-on learning tool that I put in the slides is it gives you some next steps. Where do we go from a vertical perspective so kids are doing more investigation and higher level thinking? So we have complex combinations, activating objects, operating complex objects, constructing objects. So I'm not going to read all this, you do have it, but I do have some pictures. So here we have two kids who have moved beyond. We have a little person doing some work on an iPad. Those fingers are out. You can see some pretty significant combinations. She's figuring out how to activate. And then a little guy who looks equally as intent with that particular play tool to figure out, if I put my hand on this, something may pop up. Can I turn something? Little guy again who's making some decisions about activating a toy. Constructing objects. So here at this stage, we have kids who are taking things, putting them together to make something. So a young boy using just some flat wooden, I don't know if those are like from a tree trunk or where they are, but he's doing some beautiful stacking. Another little boy has made a tunnel for his toy. And then we have somebody in the kitchen who's putting some ingredients together to make something. So once we have a perspective of what's the construct that we want for the child, one of the things that I wanted to do for Texas Focus is to talk about this progress monitoring. So you're going to take what you understand, and then you're going to put it in a metric so that you know, how is the kid making progress? So this again was an example, and the tool that I used is maybe it's not present. You're just not seeing it. Maybe it's at an emerging level, and this is why it's important to understand that horizontal perspective, because you may see a glimmer of a concept that a child is able to do, but it's really only under a set of circumstances that are very prescribed. So yep, you can do it when I set it up and we give you the signal and you do it, and then I take those materials away and give you new materials, and you don't have the same understanding of what to do. That tells me I'm going to probably want to do a little more horizontal planning with it. And then if it's mastered, hey, you can do it across environments, people, etc. And then the bottom part of this is just, we always want to pay attention to the position of the child, the upper extremity strength. We know that with some of our kids, they have low postural tone and they may not have good arm strength. So what can I do so that if I'm really looking at what you understand about objects, I'm taking away, I'm holding harmless your ability to have to also put time into sitting upright or really working on your upper extremity strength. So you just want to pay attention to the learning environment, so that if you're really looking at what can a kid do from a thinking perspective, you're not factoring in all the other things that may be competing for the child's attention, like staying upright. So we're going to practice. So I have put down a couple of protocols just to give you an example. I'm hoping that you will recognize some of these tools. The Kalyar-Zouza is a tool that I spent a lot of time with when I was working directly with kids. People may not have the Kalyar-Zouza, but it's a great tool in that it really describes the construct and gives you a lot of different ways. So I picked the concept of container play. So if you look at Kalyar-Zouza, one of the metrics that they look at is, do you open and close simple containers? Do you place objects in a shallow container? So it gives you kind of a perspective of what might be container play. If you look at developmental guidelines, which is a beautiful tool from the American Printing House for the Blind that was put together by some very great ladies, specific to little people who are blind, visually impaired, and looking at play, when you look at what they saw, they talk about search for contents of a box, putting one object in a container upon request, putting many objects in containers. If you move on, you will see that every one of these developmental protocols, some of them have some similar overlap in what we might call container play, and some of them have some unique ones. But typically we see things about putting things in and taking things out. And that's important because it starts to give you a sense of what are we going to do with containers. The Oregon project, which is being updated as well, that was normed on learners with blindness and visual impairment, and it's a tool that we often use in the field. So when you think about container play, if I said to you, get out your protocol and we're going to look at container play, we're going to go back to that thing called a construct. What's being measured? So in chat, will you just indulge me? If we were to do container play with a child, we're going to bring some containers and we're going to look at it. What do you think are some constructs or some concepts or some skills that we might be wanting to measure, that then we're going to later take on to say, how else can we make sure that the kid understands? So what might be some concepts? So I'm hoping I've described it well enough that you can put it in the chat.
Put in, take out using various sized objects and holes and lids.
Okay, so thanks for getting us started. So those are just some of the things. So I made a list just thinking about it. Look at all these different things. The container play is important. And what I want to really say to you is that as I'm observing a child and I have put out some things and I'm learning about container play, here's some of the things that I might be looking for. If I'm filling out my protocol or I'm learning to understand through play, what does a child really understand? So you have everything from those spatial relations and the prepositional concepts that you talked about to even a functional thing. Does the kid understand that there's storage concepts, that certain things go in certain containers, that containers have different lids and tops? And why this is important is, again, when you look at this, you can start to see all the different places that we may take. What do you currently know about containers as I observe you through play? What else can I do it? Object permanence. Does a child understand that if I put something in a container and I put the lid on, is a child interested in understanding that, wow, it's in there, I got to work, there's something in there that I really, really like? So here's just some of the ideas for container play. I have two pictures that make me laugh. I'm hoping you can sort them out looking at them individually, but it says the reason these toys are critical as kids, and we have some container short shape sorter type of tools. And one is, I always did this when I was in early intervention in Alaska, is I realized early on that sometimes I wanted to work with something with a child, and parents may say, why is that important, Tammy? Well, if you look at this, container play and really looking at does this fit is a life skill. So down the line, how do you know what's going to fit in the airline bin? Have you ever seen somebody who's stuffing something in that bin and you're thinking that is not going to go in there? And so the joke is, did this person really have good container play and the ability to figure out which shape can fit into which hole when they were a kid? You also see the other one. We've got a couple people trying to figure out if they can get that mattress in their car. And it's not to make fun of people, but it's only to say that many of these skills that we address through play assessment and early routines-based practice are things that matter later in life. So I would tell you, I did this years ago when I had a mom ask me about pegboards. She's like, why would we do pegboards, Tanny? And I thought to myself, why am I doing a pegboard other than it's on my protocol that I brought out to fill out? So I started to pay attention. I don't think I was just checking to see if I had a slide. But so I always think, what are real life pegboard skills? And so here's what I would say to you. A pegboard skill is really taking an object and figuring out if that object fits into a defined space. So why is that important? So what I did that day is I paid attention to all the times that I did that. So I realized that my toothbrush is in a toothbrush container. I had a little tiny hole. Every day I brushed my teeth and then I put that toothbrush back into my toothbrush holder. I realized that I had a key that I put into my car ignition. Had to make sure I had the key in the right position and the key went into the car. I used my ATM that day. I had a card that I had to put into the ATM to get some money to pay my bills. And I just went through all the times I did what we might consider adult functional pegboard skills. You can think about it. You put money into a vending machine. All the times that you make a decision, this particular object fits in this particular space. And I think kids deserve us understanding that the thing that we're spending time on in early intervention and preschool really is going to be practical and supportive as they grow and learn. I also think it's good for parents. So that's why I put this slide up there, is just to say these early skills actually have some adult level pragmatics. So many of you might know Barbara Miles. I call her a goddess in deaf blindness, but she has a marvelous video. You can find it at Perkins School for the Blind webcast, and she really talks about following kids' lead. So this is part of that play. So what you see when you've observed this particular clip, and I'm not going to show you, I've just picked the highlights, is that she joins a child, and this is a learner who has both combined vision and hearing loss, and she follows the interests of the child. And what I loved about this is it just also happened to be about container play. She's joining him during an activity where there's some play that happens to have some containers, and then later she actually did some interaction with him around his snack time, etc. And what was really beautiful is in the beginning, he wasn't that interested in Barbara, but as she observed what he was interested in, she was able to mimic and join and grow closer to him. And the picture that I remember so beautifully, if you look at the bottom left picture, is that this is a time where they were joining each other with the snack, and he brought the food to her mouth, which you think is another container. He's putting a little piece of food into her mouth, the container, and they had this beautiful shared interaction. And it might be, I don't know, the first time this child really understood that other people maybe had mouths, that other people ate the same thing that he ate. And they're doing this beautiful hand under hand, gorgeous interaction where this little boy in the beginning was doing maybe what people might have thought was more self-stimulation, which is actually a form of play for children many times, where they're telling you what they know and what they need, and we have to observe that so that we can figure out next steps. But I will tell you, play is never about taking a child's hand and directing them. It is about joining them, being invited. What you see in the top middle slide is that little hand is coming out and starting to join her hand, and they're having this beautiful exchange of working together, learning together. She's following his leads of interest, and she's also joining in so that he understands that human connection and next steps. So back to that container play. So let's just say we've observed a child and we have brought some good equipment and we've learned a lot about what that child is really doing. So here you see again a sequence about, some of you had put into the chat. So taking objects out, that may be just where a kid's at. If something's in an object, a container, a pail, a bowl, whatever is provided, the child understands, take it out, and you are just observing what's happening. Now, are you observing, does the child understand that it puts in? What happens if it's a bigger object and it doesn't fit in? What happens if all of a sudden everything's in and it's totally full and there can't be one more room? What happens? So you're observing to say, what does this child know? What is he learning? What is he thinking and making sense of? What might be next steps? So then from the hands-on learning, we see we can open simple containers. So now I'm smart enough to know that you really understand containers. Do I have containers that literally you might have to do one more thing to get inside it? So it could be something that's very, very simple that the hand can go inside easily. It may be I put a little scarf over it just to see, does he pull the scarf off in order to get something in? That's where this play starts to happen, where I'm joining the child is okay with me there, and I'm messing with a little bit just to get more information about, what if I do this? What do you do? And then I'm going to just sit back and listen and watch and see what the kid does. So we go from open simple containers to complex. So again, this may not all happen in one session, but the beautiful thing about play is that the child tells us what they know, but I also will tell you it comes with a responsibility, because as the person who's interacting with the child, I kind of need to know what could come next. So if I know, hey, you know how to do simple containers, I may start to think, what's going to happen in play routines if we start to open it up to more complex containers and then containers to carry? So again, this is one model, but it just sort of tells us where we're going. So how would we go horizontal? So let's say, and I'm trying to remember what I put in here, if we were doing container play and I had a child who was doing some of that simple in and out, how would we go horizontal? And what I mean by that is, if we were, so let's say this could be a child who's anywhere from 1 year to 5 year, and we were sitting around and mom is included, dad's included, and we're saying, yep, he really understands how to put things in and out of this particular toy. How would we go horizontal? How could we brainstorm that during the daily routine of that child? What could we do so that that child has more opportunities to practice this very thing that he's shown us he's beginning to do. So in the chat, if you could write, how would you say, let's go horizontal? What would be some things that we could do with container play for a child who's starting to put objects in and out? I'm hoping I'm explaining that well enough, Teresa.
We're going to find out. I'm just assuming because I'm in rural Montana, it takes a while for things to reach me.
Okay, so remember when we do horizontal, we're not teaching a new skill, but we're giving kids practice so that they can do it with additional materials. Does that help?
Okay, everyone, still a little quiet.
Okay, and if people are thinking,
put an item from one container to another that is beside the original container.
Okay. We're going to take that. Okay, I'm going to keep going just in the interest of time. So you could introduce several open containers in a play session. You could have open containers to explore, put in, retrieve, goldfish cookie out of a bowl. So again, we're looking at that routine. So just like I said, when I was kind of looking at my adult pegboard skills, you could say, okay, here's a child, we're really looking at what do you really understand about containers? And then you look at the daily routine. What's happening? So the only time you are focusing on in and out may not be just, hey, let's sit down and do some play, but you might be thinking, you know what can I do with container play at snack time? This is a kid who will work for goldfish. He loves goldfish. So rather than just putting the goldfish on a napkin during snack time, I may put it in a bowl. And you know what? If he's got the bowl down, I may mess with him a little bit and I may put it in a bowl that has a lid, not a hard lid, but a simple lid. So part of it is, hey, how do I get the lid out to get my goldfish? A cookie. So same kind of thing. It's time to take toys out of bins. So the idea is that you're taking what you understand the child knows, and then you're working as a team to say, what are all the things that can happen throughout the day so that the child really can practice and learn. So we might have dirty clothes in the hamper after bath. We might have a book in an open book bag. So we're not just going to hand you the book, we're going to put the book in a book bag. And guess what? That's a different kind of container. It's a different kind of problem solving that you need to do. So the idea is, what else can you do to really reinforce the in or the out that can happen throughout the day? That's what really going horizontal is that you're giving the kid real life examples to learn about and practice that skill. So other notes is you want to keep it motivating. So like if the kid doesn't like a particular food item, that's not what you're going to do. If the kid really doesn't like bath time, that may not be what you do. You'll have to figure it out. But the idea is that you take what you've learned and you've observed and you've built in those practice opportunities so that the child is just getting really, really good at this thing called containers that could be bowls, could be bins, could be buckets, could be hampers, could be reading bags. I'm just giving you a lot of practice. That's called go horizontal, where you're taking it and you're doing that next step. So you may need to model it if the child has functional vision and can watch you take something out, or you may invite that hand under hand so that the child learns it. But the goal is, again, we're just giving all sorts of practice. So here we have a couple of pictures of two little people who are just having a good time. And remember when we said play, this is about that child's self-discovery. What's motivating to this kid? So here we just have some little plastic Easter eggs. We've got a bucket. The child, it looks like you maybe turned it upside down. That's great. I'm just going to wait and see. Do you understand? You can put something on top, but if you want to put it in, you got to turn it over. Here on the other side, I think somebody said this, we have one container to the next. So we're not saying, hey, little person, this is exactly how you have to play with it. We're just saying, if we really want to explore that concept of in and out, that we're not just going to do a one-time check off on a protocol, but we're really going to explore that concept and give lots of practice. And we're just going to stand back and watch and see what happens. But this kid, both these kids are telling me, what else may I want to bring into the play environment? So here's some very specific practice. Now, oh my goodness, I got a kiddo who's got some little tiny, it looks like glass marbles. And here's what I love about recycles. That looks like a diaper wipe container that somebody said, hey, when the wipes are done, let's turn it into a great container for further play. If I'm the OT, I'm like clapping my hands because now I'm looking at really great grasping skills and great isolation of a container to see, can you get it in? Again, obviously, this is a child who's very motivated. If I'm the teacher of the visually impaired, I'm paying attention to say, wow, you can see all those little light colored shiny beads on a pretty dull background. That tells me a lot about vision. I'm learning about it. But in the meantime, I'm getting a lot of information about what does this child know and understand. Later on the second slide, we just have a picture of kind of a muffin tin. And this is a little person who's motivated to fill up the tins. What's beautiful about this is that those could be concepts about whether or not every single opening has a object in it. It could be a counting task. It could be not a great barrel cell, but it could be a double barrel cell with the 6 dots. It could be it's full, it's empty. So that's why all of this gets to be important, is that we may be working on the concepts of in and out, but then we realize we can go elsewhere with it. So it's just giving kids practice throughout the day so we know that those concepts are grounded. So again, here's just an example of how you want to monitor progress so that you really know things are happening. So with container play, an example might be it's not present. You do not see the child appear to understand that you're putting objects in containers or taking them out. Emerging is you start to see a little bit with kind of that one set of materials, and then masters, he does it all over the place. So how would we go vertical? So we just gave examples of horizontal, that we're going to have multiple containers and opportunities that are realistic throughout the day to practice this thing called put it in and take it out. How might we go vertical? So now what this means is that if you know the kid, so we looked at those little people who were practicing putting in and taking out. What else can we do to containers to try to go vertically with the idea that we're going to go to that next skill set? So I'm hoping in chat, if you have a child who is getting, I know how to take it, put it in, I know how to take it out. What might be some things that we could say we could practice throughout the daily routine so that we're expanding container play? Anybody have any ideas?
I had one come in of increased complexity, take out and give it to a play partner.
Ooh.
Child has to open the container, then put in or out.
That's great. So the idea again with vertical is that you're taking what you know through that good play-based observation and you're figuring out what do we do with it. Now, what I put here doesn't mean that this is absolute. These are just some ideas. So you use a mastered container so the kid really gets it. It doesn't have a lid. And now you put a barrier on it so it's easily removed, like maybe a scarf or a piece of cardboard. But all of a sudden you're messed with this kid and it's like, wait a minute, I used to just reach in and now there's something in my way. Can I get it off? So that tells you about some problem solving. It talks about object permanence. If there's something in that container that the kid really, really wants, but it gives you a little bit of what else can the kid tell you that he understands. Use a mastered container without a lid that you've removed and put on a lid that slides off. So it just gives you an idea. So what I'm hoping you're starting to see is that play tells you where a child's at. And when we intervene, we, with permission, meaning we've joined the child is happy with us being there. Our hands are not considered intrusive. We're not guiding the kid. but we're messing with something, and we're messing it with the person with the purpose of saying, what else can we do? So you may not go extreme, it might just be a little bit, and see what happens. So I have a picture of a little person. It says, so many containers, so little time. And why I think, what I'm hoping you understand is that the purpose of this presentation isn't to talk about containers. It's to use containers as an example of what you can take that you've observed with the child, and then how do you go with it in everyday routines to really build up the concepts and the understanding of the child. So here we have a little person, and we got a lid that can pull off. We have a lid that screws off. We have another lid that's kind of a snap-on. You know, what I like about this, I don't know the story here, but it might be that this is a child who's going to help with some kind of routine with mom and dad that involves a morning breakfast, etc. But if you know you're working on containers, this might be a great place within that child's routine to say, hey, Mama needs your help. Can you help open up the pepper shaker? We need some baking, but you gotta screw that up. So look at all the things that this little person is mastering, that containers have real life function, and I'm helping mom, and I'm actually doing different things with my hands. I have to problem solve. This one I gotta peel off. This one I have to snap off. This one I have to turn. So that's going vertically. Kids having to do some problem solving. So lots of different containers when you just think about all the things that come your way. Here we have what looks to be like some straws inside. We had to figure out how to open that one little section of the cap. There's really two ways I can get to the straws. I either have to turn and screw it off, or I have to pop it up. But again, I'm just giving a little more problem solving to see what happens. So as we go through our time, I'm looking, I think I got about 10 minutes. I always want to remind people that play begins with P, and I don't know why, maybe I'm just a neurotic person, but there's a lot of P's that I want you to pay attention to. So mind your P's. So when we play with kids and when we do that next step programming, here's just some things to be thinking about. And I'll give some examples so you have them in writing. But you always want to pay attention about preferences. So we have a great situation where we have a little person in a light box, and then we have some transparent color bowls. So again, we have container play, which, you know, goes with the theme of this particular presentation, but it doesn't have to be container play. But let's say I have a child that really needs that extra boost of illumination to really get interested in it. If I'm doing container play, I'm going to make sure that I understand the preferences of the kids, which are really predicated on two things. One is the sensory abilities that this little person clearly can see. Those colors may be motivating to the child. And that's where I start to get a sense of not only what are the sensory abilities, but does a kid have something that they just like? I may pay attention to that yellow just seems to be the color of the day. And we see this clearly with some of our children with brain-based visual impairment. What I may find from a preference is that's too much stuff. You know, I have to assume the person playing with this child knows that she can handle 4 different containers, but part of the preferences might be, you know what, if I'm going to present something and I'm going to really look at what that child does from an interaction perspective, I'm going to do one thing at a time. So that's really the P part of preference. Here we might see that we have a child who really responds to strong contrast. I got a white container, white bowl on a dark background. So we're just paying attention to, again, what are those needs and preferences of the child to have access to the play materials. P from a pacing perspective, pacing is just another way of saying wait time, so that we're spending time making sure that when we present the materials, that we're giving kids time to process what they're seeing, what they're hearing, what they're feeling. Then they're taking time to register that. What does it mean? They're kind of checking in with their brain to say, what does that mean? And then what do I do with it? So some kids are pretty quick. I put something out and they reach for it immediately and start to interact. With other kids, I might put something out and give it a little jingle to make a sound or register movement of the object. then I just need to wait. And that's very customized and personal to the child. But make sure when you're playing that, especially when you join the child, that you're not moving too fast, that you're giving kids time to truly register what has just happened, and then to organize a motor response. Positioning and proximity. We got 2 slides. One is a little bird who's in a high chair, has a beautiful tray, so we've really kind of captured that space. She can't go too far. Everything she needs is right in front of her. She's got good upright posture. She's not slumping into gravity. She's really physically available to do what she needs to do. Then we have a young man who clearly has some motor challenge, and he is in an adaptive device so that he has optimal postural security. He's got a tray in front of him. What I like about that tray is that as he's reaching in and he's kneading the dough, he's actually getting great proprioceptive input because that bowl is grounded on the tray. So when he pushes in, he's getting a little resistance back, and it's giving him a lot more input. And so we always want to pay attention to how close are the objects to the kids, are they available, but also what's the positioning of the child. If my goal is to really learn what the child is understanding, I want to take away motor complications so I'm not fighting with gravity. Gravity isn't my competition because the child has to pay attention to it. So how we place objects are really important for this other P word, which is called practice. Now, what you see here is a bunch of examples where things are tethered, and anytime something is tethered, it always means that you are in close proximity of the child so you can observe, so that strings, etc., don't get caught in the child's wrists, that the child is safe. But what is really great is that these placement opportunities give kids practice to play, because things aren't going to roll away. They're not going to fall down to the floor and the kid no longer has access. So part of the play, when you're looking at it, is setting up scenarios where kids truly can practice. What we know about practice is that there's not a kid on the planet, there's not a human on the planet who doesn't learn through repetition. And how you do repetition is you get to practice it over and over. Doesn't mean we do drill and kill, but for these kids, as long as they continue to be engaged, and so the kids will tell us, I'm still engaged, they're practicing. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Where is it? There is it. Now I know where it is. Now I'm going to figure out, what does that thing do? When I pull on it, it makes a sound. Let me do that again. I'm going to pull it and I'm going to make a sound. So as long as a child's engaged and we're observing that, we're collecting information about what's of interest to the child. How far can they reach? Do they have a color preference? Are they pulling on something versus patting it? Are they combining it? We're getting lots of information about what's that kid doing. But again, especially with anything tethered, I'm paying attention to make sure the child is safe. So you may see different play frames. These have been around for a long time. People in visual impairment are trained on it, as well as therapists. Again, you're learning from the child. So it's not a babysitting opportunity where I'm putting you down and you're just having a good time. That may be okay if mom or dad are making dinner and they can observe the child. But if I'm the teacher or the related service provider, I just want to take time and observe what's happening here, and then what else do I do with it? So that practice is really important. Fred Rogers, play gives children a chance to practice what they're learning. Could not have said that better. Thank you, Fred Rogers. So that's why we're talking about these routines. When I've given an example about if it's in and out, how do I make that happen across either a school day or a home day, so kids really get to practice. That reactivity of the environment means, as adults, we're setting it up so there's something for that child to learn, and I understand enough about that kid to know how hard does he have to work. And what I mean by that is that if I have a child who has really limited motor abilities, then I want to set up that routine so the child doesn't have to do a lot from a motor perspective to get the cognitive bang that I'm looking for. With some kids, I can set it up where you have to work a little harder. other kids, that's not my goal. I'm looking at what are you thinking and how are you learning. So the bottom line is we really want to do opportunities for meaningful repetition. So it's not drill and kill. Many years ago, I was an O&M specialist in a school for the blind, and I couldn't get this kid to go from the front door to the preschool. And as an O&M, I just was incredibly challenged, like, what's wrong? It's just a simple route. You go down the hallway and then you make a right turn and you get into your preschool room. And this is before I was smart enough to figure out I needed to visit the preschool room. And so I finally visited the preschool room. And what I realized is this poor little bird would show up every day, and the teacher, who was not a very creative teacher, would put a stacking ring in front of this kid. And that's the first thing that the kid had to do every day. He was well beyond stacking rings, and he had to do it for about 20 minutes, and he could care less. So there was no motivation to get to the preschool room. So when I went back to my O&M supervising teacher, I said, I can't teach this route. And he said, what is wrong with you, Tanny? It's a simple route. And I said, he's not motivated to go to the preschool. And so he stopped and he started to laugh, and he said, that was a really good discovery. So the idea is we're not doing drill and kill, same thing every day. We're taking that construct or that thing that we want the child to explore and understand, and we're finding meaningful ways to do that repetition throughout the day. So I'm going to end you with this. I think I have maybe another minute. Is that this is a picture that one of my good colleagues, Bess Dennison, put in some of the visa training years ago. And I looked at it and I looked at it, and I've had a lot of fun with this over the years. I've used this slide for early O&M purposes. But in the interest of time, I would say this is one of the things that sometimes can happen with kids, is that we set up a play routine and then we go, now what? So we see a child, whether we agree with it or not, he's got a bolster, he's in a little bit of sidelining, there's a pegboard, and there's a variety of objects. There's a green measuring cup, there's some little balls on a string, there's a teddy bear, etc. And so what I usually do with this is I say to people, what do you see? And people typically say, he's going for the green measuring cup. And what I would say to you is there's lots we could talk about in terms of figuring out why that green measuring cup is important. It could be that it's the only thing the kid can reach from a position. It could be that he has cerebral or cortical visual impairment and he loves green. It could be a lot of things. So we're going to just pretend that we've done a lot of assessment, and we understand from a play perspective that this green measuring cup has meaning to the child. So what I would say to you is that sometimes when we see this kind of scenario, it's an over and over everyday experience for the kid. And what I would say to you is understand what you are seeing from a play perspective, and then think about how would we go horizontal and how would we go vertical. So from a horizontal perspective, I could say, because I'm a smart play-based person, guess what? I have more green measuring cups in my repertoire because I know that's important. Smart enough, I got them at the dollar store. So what can I do with that green measuring cup throughout the day so that the kid has more, wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's say this kid is banging. So if he's banging, then horizontal, I may look at what else can be banging. So then if I go vertical, then I have those other measuring cups. And now I'm going to try to do something else with those measuring cups that are embedded throughout the routine with the child. Could be that that measuring cup is what we pour milk out of at snack time. Could be that that measuring cup is something that we pour the alfalfa pellets. This is what I usually do with the O&M because there's a pet rabbit in the house or a pet rabbit in the school. So the idea is I'm taking it from a banger to something that you pour out of. But the idea is I'm doing a next step to protect it across the routines of the child. So I think I'm out of time, so I'm just going to end with saying don't forget to play. The idea today is, again, I don't think I gave you everything you needed to learn about play-based assessment, but I'm hoping that it was helpful just to understand that when you typically observe children and you join their play, you learn what they know, but then you have a responsibility of a next step to say, What else? How do I cement this from a concept perspective, and how do I elevate it? So with that, I don't know if there were any questions in the chat, but I think we have a couple minutes for questions, and then I know my good friends in Montana have some housekeeping.
So comment came in. Thanks, Tanny. Great to see you. Lots of great ideas. Jerry Hart.
Oh, hi, Jerry. Okay, does anybody have any questions? If you don't, that's okay. We're going to go on to some next step logistics. Honestly, what I hope is it just reinforced maybe what you're already doing with kids, and I hope no matter what that you're playing and you're defending that playing is what's really important for this age group.
Another thank you for sharing this valuable information, Carrie Norick. She's from Montana here. I love so much every time I hear you speak about play-based assessment. Thanks, Tanny. Julie Meyer.
Ah, hey, Julie.
And another thank you from Nancy Hatfield. Just a thank you. I always enjoy and learn from Tanny. And I would agree with them all. It was a pleasure to have you with us. I may have a question for students with medical needs. How do we introduce the concept of play?
Yeah, and you know what? Thank you for that question, because I think sometimes people go, how do we do it? Especially when we have medically complex children who maybe don't have a lot of volitional movement, maybe have a lot of things going on, whether it's a trach or a gavage or et cetera. What I would say to you is that that's where I think Barbara Miles is the master, is what is something that you start to join the child in. And parents oftentimes can sometimes inadvertently give you information about likes, but if you know that there is a daily routine with the child, there's something that happens to that kid maybe every single day, that may be something that you can harness to say, what can we do with this? And it's going to take some investigation. It's going to take some observation. But let's just say that every single day there is a procedure that happens with the kid, or even let's just think about diaper changing. There's something that happens every single day. What can you do to just turn it into a little bit of the child being engaged and activated, and you're learning to see? It could be something as simple as vibration, could be something like color, could be something like on a temperature or whatever. So what I would say to you is that it can be pretty complicated. You need to make sure that you're not doing anything that would increase risk to the child, especially with a kid who is very medically fragile. But what's an opportunity so that maybe the kid has interest? So when I was giving examples like even diaper changing, the child goes through a daily experience. Can you introduce that the diaper is in the child's hands, and that might be something just to see, do those hands come out to touch it? If they do, you might start to see, you know, he's interested in the texture of the diaper. I wonder if we could change something so that we have Mylar paper, or we have crepe paper, or we have, you know, something else, just to see maybe what it is. Many years ago, I came to Montana. I told Teresa this. I came to Montana, and there was a child who really, when I said to the parents, what does this child like? They said the one thing she does is she likes her bottle. And so I said, let's mess with her bottle. So we did something as simple as we put a little ponytail, one of those little fuzzy scrunchies on her bottle. And what happened is when she held it in her hand, all of a sudden that little hand came down and started going, this is different. This is different. And then started pulling up that little scrunchie, and then it would snap back, and pulling up that scrunchie, and it would snap back. So the idea was, I didn't know if that was going to work. I was there for like one part of a day, but we found something that the child did every day, did her bottle, something that she liked, and I used the word mess with it. I should probably just say we played with it. But we did something to see if those hands would come out. And remember, we said it's not always hands. Sometimes it might be the mouth, it might be the feet, etc. But something that invited that child, and then we paid attention to it. So in the very beginning, pay attention to what are your opportunities, What are the objects that the child is exposed to? And do you see, like if you had to plot out simple object, it comes in the mouth, what else can you do? And just start there. I don't know if that answers the question, but you certainly always want to make sure you stay within the balance of keeping that kid safe, especially with our kids who are so medically fragile, clean toys, etc. And it doesn't have to be a toy. And that's one of the beauties of play. When I used to work in Alaska, I learned very early on not to bring some of my commercial toys to the village, because I learned I had to leave them there, because if a kid really liked them, there's no way I was going to put it back in my toy bag and take it back to Anchorage. And this was a family who maybe couldn't afford that toy. It didn't fit in. Later, Part C became very clear that you use what's in the home. So finding what's available with the kid and really reinforcing every home has something a child could play with. I guarantee you don't need commercial toys. And that's why I tried to focus on containers. And I love that one little container that's the, converted wet wipes thing, because you don't have to go buy a container. You just look around and they're in the cupboard. They're everywhere. So that can be the source of play for children. So did I come close to answering your question?
You gave them time to respond, yes, and thank you. And I have another question that I would like to go to Tanny. Resources/advice for positioning to maximize engagement with kiddos who mostly use legs.
Yeah, Jay Greeley, my colleague who used to work at the Anchor Center, was fantastic about really turning me into a foot watcher with some of our kids. And I have some great pictures of kids who have done a lot of learning with their feet. What I would say is that this is where you really want to be good friends with your motor therapist, your PTs and your OTs, but certainly your PTs, just to pay attention. Some kids really are going to work better in a full supine position in the beginning, just because gravity is the enemy. So then it's really packaging what's around the child that has a reactive environment, so that foot can come into play. So you might think, for example, a kid in a supine or on the back position, and I have put their feet up against something that's really going to give them some feedback to see if that little foot snakes out, touches, come back, snakes out, and you're looking for, like, does it come back for more? Just like that little kid with the puddle, does it come back for more? So paying attention. And what I would say is there's two ways to look at play from a physical perspective. One is I hold the kid harmless so the kid isn't fighting gravity, right? If this is a kid who gravity is the enemy, like it might be a learner with charge where fighting gravity is a full-time job, or a child with cerebral palsy who doesn't have good upright posture. So if I'm really looking at play, I may say I'm going to hold the kid neutral to gravity. It might be supine. It might be just like that picture I had where the kid was in sidelining and somebody assisted to say this is a good position, or the young man who was doing the cooking who was in an adapted chair clearly had good postural support. But what I would also say is that then you can turn it around so kids can fight gravity because they're interested in play. So the little kid who has trouble sitting up, I may give some support, but I'm going to say, if you really want to work at it, I'm putting it up higher. So you got to use those dummy muscles to come up higher and get those hands out. So now I can use play almost therapeutically, like will work for XYZ, meaning I'm going to risk gravity because what I'm doing is so interesting to me. But that's where you want to kind of take turns, because somebody may want the latter and you also want to protect the former. Like, let's hold the body work neutral so the kid can do the cognitive work. Does that make sense? And sometimes let's make it harder so he has to do the body work because play is the motivating. But I would say always with your kids who have motor compromise, you want to work with people who are really going to make sure kids are in good positions. Kind of the good rule of thumb is that if your hips are neutral, meaning you're supported, then your trunk is supported. And if your trunk is supported, your head is supported. And that's really important if we're asking people to look. that the head is well supported. If we're asking them to use their hands, their trunk needs to be supported, which means their pelvis needs to be supported. So PTs are going to be your good friends, but I would say find that balance, because if somebody's always wanting to work on motor skills, sometimes you just may need to say, let's silent the motor skills so that we can really work on the thinking and the cognitive skills. And again, when kids are engaged, they don't know that they're working. They are just playing and they're having a good time, and it's reinforcing. And so they may develop other skills beyond cognitive skills because they're so busy working it and having fun with it, then now all of a sudden you see an improvement in trunk. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Thank you, Tanny. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Tanny, thank you for helping us stretch our thinking as we look at play. I'm going to pass this back to Kim to wrap up our housekeeping details. Thank you so much, Tanny.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Great. This is Kim. Thank you very much. I did put a link for our short evaluation in the question or chat box. Please do take the time to fill that out for us. If you don't have a chance today, the link will also be in the follow-up email you receive from GoToWebinar tomorrow. And we don't expect you to fill out the survey twice, just so you know, but please do take the time to fill that out for us. Any future webinar opportunities that we have will be announced on our websites and through the Montana Deafblind Project and Montana Transition email lists, so be watching for those. The recording from today's session will be posted to our 2 training archives pages, and I've put the URLs or website addresses for those in your chat or question box. It can take up to 2 weeks for us to get those posted. Just so you know. And we have lots of other recordings of webinars on those websites, including the first 2 webinars of our early identification series. So take a look. We also have our Introduction to Deaf Blindness series webinars posted there, Communicative Competence series, and much more. With that, I would like to thank Teresa and Ellen for their help in organizing today. I'd like to thank our captioning and our interpreting professionals for all of their assistance today. I'd like to thank all of you who participated in the webinar. And Tanny, I especially would like to thank you. I have not had the opportunity to hear you present before. This was fantastic. My mind is just brimming with ideas and thoughts. So thank you so much.
You guys are never going to look at a diaper wipe box the same again.
I'm ready to go search them out. So thank you again, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon. Take care.